Good afternoon, everyone. The meeting for the Assembly Committee on Growth and Infrastructure will now come to order. Will the committee secretary please call the roll?
Assemblywoman Brown May. Assemblyman Ellison. Assemblyman Levitt. Assemblyman Miller. Assemblywoman Peters. Assemblyman Roberts. Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. Assemblyman Watts. Assemblyman Wheeler. Assemblyman Yeager. Chairman Ro Moreno.
And I am here. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's meeting. Today we will hear one bill and we will have a work session on 6 previously heard measures before this committee. Before we get started, as most people know, the building is open on a limited basis. This is the first day that all 9 of our seats have been spoken for, so yay, there's people with us. But we still have people joining us virtually, and we welcome you to our committee. We will have public comment for this committee at the end of our agenda, and each public comment is limited to 2 minutes. So, without further ado, we will start with our first bill hearing, and it will be SB 328, and we welcome Senator Lang to the committee. I think it's your first time before us. Welcome to Assembly Growth and Infrastructure.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. So, Madam Chair, members of the committee, I am Roberta Lang, representing Senate District 7 in Clark County. And thank you for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 328 in its first reprint. The bill addresses targets for energy storage and contractor qualifications for energy storage installations. I'm pleased to be joined by Hunter Stern from IBEW 1245, Will Adler from Silver State Government Relations, and Bob Johnston, who is a policy analyst for energy, who will provide additional information on energy storage. This bill addresses 2 issues: increasing Nevada's energy storage capacity and ensuring installation of energy storage systems is done safely and correctly. As you may recall, in Senate Bill 204 in the 2017 session, directed the Public Utilities Commission to do a cost-benefit analysis on targets for energy storage capacity and to set biennial targets if the benefits outweighed the costs. The analysts resulted in the commission setting biennial targets of 100 megawatts in 2020 and increasing up to 1,000 megawatts in 2030. Since 2018, when these targets were set, energy storage has been increasingly recognized as a critical component of efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to facilitate the nation's migration to renewable energy. Other states have set goals as high as 3,000 megawatts by 2030, and due to advances in technology that have lowered costs and improved storage systems, I believe it's time to take another look at Nevada's energy storage targets. The other part of the bill focuses on qualifications needed for the installation of commercial or industrial energy storage systems. As you will hear from Mr. Stern, energy storage systems can pose a fire danger and cause other problems if not properly installed. So it is important that we update the qualifications for contractors working on these projects. With that background, and your permission, Madam Chair, I would like to walk through the bill that was posted on Nellis, dated May 10th, and is numbered Amendment 3352. Starting with Section 2.5, the bill sets forth legislative findings on energy storage to emphasize the importance of this issue. These findings are essentially the same criteria that were used to determine the public interest when the Commission set the initial targets in 2018. Yes, ma'am?
Senator Lang, just to interrupt you for a second, members of the committee, the amendment 3352 is on Nellis. If you do not have it at your desk, that came out just a little while ago before our committee meeting started. It is up on Nellis. And I believe that's what the senator will be referring to. Thank you. You can go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. Sections 3 and 3.5 make conforming changes and updates to related statutes. Shifting gears now, Section 5 adds new adds a new section to Chapter 624 of the NRS, which states that a contractor must hold a valid license in the classification required for the installation of an energy storage system. In addition to the required license classifications set by the State Contractors Board, Section 5 also requires an installer of energy storage systems to have completed the energy storage and microgrid training and certification program, but only if the project is not, and I want to reiterate, not on residential property. Section 5, as amended in the mock-up, also clarifies that only one person who is supervising the work is required to have the specialized certification. And finally, Section 5 defines what is considered a residential property and therefore not subject to additional certification requirements. Sections 6 and 7 incorporate these new standards into the regulatory provisions of Chapter 624 as administered by the State Contractors Board. Going back to the energy storage targets, Section 7.5 directs the Public Utilities Commission to reevaluate the current targets based on the 2021 Integrated Resource Plan recently filed by our largest electrical utility and to revise the targets as appropriate in the public interest. The Commission must report back to the Legislative Commission no later than January 1, 2022 on whether any revisions have been or will be adopted as a result of the reevaluation. Section 9 repeals a provision relating to the initial setting of energy storage targets, but you may notice that this very important criteria in that section are the basis for the legislative findings in Section 2.5 of the bill. In closing, I believe this bill will fill a gap in contractor qualifications for installers of commercial energy storage systems and will also speed up the reevaluation of our energy storage targets based on current technology and cost. Both are important steps toward increasing our state's energy storage capacity and complementing our efforts to fight climate change and provide sustainability provision of electricity to our citizens. Madam Chair, members of the committee, that concludes my remarks. I would like to turn the presentation over to Mr. Bob Johnston to discuss the energy storage targets, and then to Mr. Stern to discuss the contractor provisions and the training in greater detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Good afternoon, Chair Monroe Moreno, Vice Chair Watts, and members of the committee. My name is Bob Johnston. I'm a policy advisor to the Nevada Senate Democratic Caucus. I'm here to provide a little history on energy storage and legislative action and commission action on energy storage prior to this session. Recognizing that energy storage provides opportunities to reduce the use of fossil fuel and reduce the emission of greenhouse gases and other air pollutants, the legislature in 2017 passed SB 204, which required the public utilities to first determine whether it was in the public interest to establish biennial targets for the procurement of energy storage systems by NV Energy. And second, if they determined it was in the public interest, to set those biennial storage targets. The Commission subsequently conducted a thorough investigation and rulemaking, determined it was in the public interest to adopt storage targets, and then adopted a regulation setting those targets through 2030. That regulation only became final on June 8, 2020. The targets start at 100 megawatts in 2020, go to 200 megawatts in 2022, and then increase in 200 megawatt increments up to 1,000 megawatts in 2030. Those regulations also provide for the Commission's review and modification of those biennial targets as necessary. Since the passage of SB 204, the cost of battery energy storage systems has come down dramatically. According to an EIA report, the average energy capacity cost of utility-scale battery storage in the United States has decreased from $2,152 per kilowatt hour in 2015 to $625 per kilowatt hour in 2018, or about a 70% decrease in costs over a 3 or 4 year period there. The predictions are that trend in declining costs, at least for battery energy storage systems, will continue. The National Renewable Energy Labs, NREL, recently released a report predicting a range of from $144 to $293 per kilowatt hour for utility scale battery storage by 2030. If you use their base case forecast, they're saying $208 per kilowatt hour by 2030, so that would be another decline of 67% from 2018. Energy storage systems can provide flexible, near instantaneous capacity for the electricity grid. The clearest use case in Nevada is using this storage to capture mid-morning solar energy at a time of low demand on NV Energy's system and save that renewable energy for use in the late afternoon and early evening when system demand is high, but solar generation is declining. And many of you may have heard about this. In California, they refer to this as the duck curve problem. The curve describing the dispatch of non-solar resources that start off high, and then as solar production comes, dip way down, and then as the sun goes down, the requirement for fossil fuel or other non-solar resources goes way up. And it's been described as a duck curve, that reliance on non-solar resources. NV Energy has taken full advantage of the price declines we've seen in battery energy storage systems and has, in the last 3 years, brought forward 9 different utility scale combined solar plus storage projects, sometimes referred to as hybrid projects, that have been approved by the Commission and are scheduled to come online over the next 3 years. If those projects come into operation as planned, NV Energy will, by 2024, have 1,028 megawatts of storage online, or amount in 2024 that's already greater than the 2030 target of 1,000 megawatts set by the Commission's regulations. Given these events since the passage of SB 204, Section 7.5 of the bill, as summarized by Senator Lang, requires the Commission to reevaluate the storage targets and make any revisions determined by the Commission to be in the public interest. Section 7.5 also requires a report back to the Legislature on the results of that reevaluation on or before November 1, 2022. That concludes my testimony, and I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. My name is Hunter Stern. I'm Assistant Business Manager for IBW Local 1245. We represent workers in northern and central Nevada working for NV Energy and contractors. So I wanted to to follow up Senator Lang's statements on the training and safety aspects of this bill. Specifically, the ESAM TAC is a national training program that's which educates electricians to properly install and service and maintain energy storage systems in a safe and reliable way. It's key to the use of these systems, particularly since at present, and Mr. Johnson was mentioning this indirectly, at present over 90% of the energy storage systems on the market are lithium-ion batteries. Lithium-ion batteries are a very effective and efficient energy storage technology, but they also come with some risk. And the particular risk that's involved is what we call in our industry thermal runaway. In other words, the battery itself becomes overly heated, either through a malfunction, maybe a equipment error, or maybe improper installation, and it begins to discharge. And it begins to discharge at high temperature, and the result is fire. So these are particular systems which have the potential, even though they do very, very good, they have the potential to do very bad. We've spoken with the firefighters in some of the fire districts. Part of the assurance in installation and maintenance of this equipment is this training program, ESAM TAC. We have also put in a phased-in approach so that there will be time for customers and users of this storage, on the commercial side, as well as taken some amendments from the original draft to ensure that it's clear that large-scale installation are still the purview of general engineering requirements based on the contractors board comments, and to ensure that those large projects are in no way changed or altered based on the existing the projects that Mr. Johnston outlined. But there is some value, more than some value, there's value to requiring this training to ensure that the people, because these are relatively new pieces of equipment, they create a new electrical environment. Once the equipment is installed and up and running, it is literally part of the grid, and it creates a safety hazard for any firefighters who might be responding to fire, or utility workers, our members, and members at Local 396 down south, who might be responding to some kind of outage or other problem and have a backfeed from this equipment out onto the street. So that's the goal and purpose of the safety rules and the ESAMTAC training. We have had lots of inquiries about the availability of training and to make sure that there will be enough training to ensure that people can get out and install. This would not interrupt or somehow undermine the commercial activity. The only barrier at present for training both in northern and southern Nevada is the COVID restrictions, of which we're just coming out of them. Full classes can now be attended by electricians. Since the bill was drafted and released, there's been 2 classes in the north and 1 class in the south, and both training centers have assured the senator, and I can assure you, that as needed, these classes will be increased. In other words, if there's a demand, we can meet the demand. And the cost is minimal, and the availability is as needed. I also wanted to mention a couple of other points, a little bit off track, but also in terms of safety and reliability of the equipment. But in terms of the value of energy storage in general, sort of buttressing what Mr. Johnston said, there are a number of different technologies. Right now, as I said, lithium ion is the dominant technology. We have great benefits. There is lithium in Nevada. There's also a technology or technique to extract lithium from geothermal resources. That hasn't been reduced to practice yet, but there are 2 different planned attempts, and this also could be a benefit to the state. But there are other longer, to address the problems that Mr. Johnson identified over in California. There are other longer duration storage technologies that are also available, and it's our interest in ensuring that whether it's lithium ion or another technology like longer duration, like pump storage, or hydrogen, which is also being discussed as a energy storage system, that all of these are introduced in a safe and reliable way for Nevadans and the people who visit this state. Thank you. I'm available for any questions. Again, Hunter Stern, IBW Local 1245.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stern. Do you have other presenters?
Sorry, Madam Chair. That concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions. Hunter Stern will answer questions related to the training and logistical stuff for the workers, and Bob Johnston will answer policy questions.
Well, I will just start with the first question. Members have before them the mock-up for the proposed amendment. Can you let us know how you got to this amendment? It came just before the committee meeting. It's quite different than the bill that I believe most members probably read last night or 2 days ago before this meeting. How did we get to this amendment instead of what was originally proposed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great question. As you know, bills evolve, and we've been meeting with stakeholders since the start of when we first put the bill in. And so we, after talking with our stakeholders, decided to take out residential solar. They were at a place where this wasn't, we'd love for them to have the training, but it wasn't a place where we could agree on the training and being able to implement that. So for this time, we took out residential and concentrated on the bigger projects. We met with NV Energy and Southwest Gas, and just last night came to agreement on some of the language. So that's why the bill has changed a bit from yesterday till today when we got the final amended version.
Thank you. I think Assemblyman Roberts has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for bringing the bill forward. I appreciate the amendment and changes. My question is really for Mr. Stern more than anything regarding the training program. And as he walks up, and you covered a lot of it during your presentation, about the program. And I'm just curious, is there another training program that's out there that's comparable in the country, and why this one?
Mr. Stern, is your mic on?
Not
Thank you.
very good, thank you. That's, see, we're all reminded how to act in person. First thing, check the mic. Hunter Stern, IBW Local 1245. Thank you for the question. Now let me start with my answer again. The answer is that there is not at this point or at this time another comparable national program to eSAMTAC. Mostly because this is still relatively new technology, and its utilization in particular commercial environments or commercial buildings is still very new. There has been some consternation nationally, again, mostly from the firefighters, and firefighters and fire districts were part of the development of this program.
And thank you, I appreciate it. And just a quick follow-up, Madam Chair. And so you mentioned the training and the capacity, and you may have said it and I missed it, but how long is the training and the price for the courses you said were relatively inexpensive? Who controls the pricing on that? Is that something that the national certification kind of tells you can only charge X amount of dollars? Could you explain that?
Yes, absolutely. Starting with the pricing, it's $125 per person per course. The training is basically 8 days, typically 2 days a week for a 4-week period. But they are full days. If I remember correctly, and I think I do, there are 16 different labs, although I'm going to look back to my colleague.
We put it up on the documents and notes.
With some of the detail, with the syllabus and the labs, so the point or the purpose is to make sure that there is a standard program and it is fully taught and understood by the students.
Thank you very much for the answer and for the sponsor of the bill. Thank you for bringing it forward. I think energy storage is definitely a hurdle for us to really leverage solar energy in Nevada. I know there's a lot of interest in it, and so I appreciate the targets. Just had some questions about the certification process, and thank you for the answers, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stern, while you're there, don't move.
Yes.
Assemblyman Wheeler has a question for you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Stern, I'm just wondering, the training that you're doing that we'll set in statute here, is any of that training for non-union workers, or is that just for union workers? And if it is, any other unions beside your own?
It is for all trained electricians, union and non-union. There is no restriction, and in fact, at this point, the more the merrier. The more knowledge and expertise we can get out in the field, as quick as we can, the better for everyone.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Assemblyman Yeager, but I'm not exactly sure who he's going to direct that to. So you might be back, Mr. Stern.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just had a clarifying question. I want to make sure I understand the provisions of Section 5 in the amendment. So the way I read it, anybody who's installing an energy storage system has to have a valid license and the classification required to perform the work. But then in subsection B, there's the additional requirement that it has to be performed under the direct supervision of someone with the training. But I wanted to make sure that in any case, the people doing the installing have to have the valid license and the classification, and that additional requirement then only applies to non-residential projects. Do I have it correct?
Sandra Lang for the record. That is correct, Assemblyman. And we felt it was important. Everybody on the work group doesn't need to have the training. One person needs to have the training. Initially, we wanted everyone to have it because we thought that was the safest thing. But in talking with the stakeholders, it was too much. And so we pared it down to one person.
Next, we have Assemblyman Ellison.
Oh, ma'am?
Go ahead.
May I also add that on the training, everyone that's getting trained has until July 1 of 2022. So it isn't something they have to go get tomorrow. They're going to have some time to get that training.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Assemblyman Ellison.
Thank you, and this is for Hunter. I got some questions for you. Okay, and as this is right now, apparently it's any battery storage, no matter what the size is, and how big of KW units are you going to demand that they get this training on? Because they're doing this stuff all over right now, everywhere. So we've never seen the fires you guys you're talking about, unless it must be in megawatts somewhere. But I want to know what size is this going to be limited to? So is it going to be any battery storage? Because if it is, you got problems because you've got lighting storages that are battery backups. You have generators with battery backup. You've got all these battery systems that are in there. So is this strictly for how big of systems?
For the record, Hunter Stern, IBW 1245. So specifically, this was some of the discussion in which we agreed to remove the residential customers and that size. We are not specifying a size because the battery storage technologies and specifically lithium ion in commercial buildings or commercial settings are of substantial size in a sense that they will need to support and provide energy for the building itself. So, so there is not a set megawatt or kilowatt per hour size of storage, but it is the equipment itself.
And I got a problem with that. And I can tell you why. You've got small commercial businesses. Follow up? The problems I got, if you got small commercial buildings that's got storage in them right now, for lighting or whatever that's using solar that's collecting and then the battery backups that are in there. So to do this, any commercial building, it could be a small grocery store, anything would have to fall under your training. And the other thing, this shouldn't be through a union training. If there's going to be a training, it should be through the community colleges or colleges, not just set per this group that you're dealing with. And the reason that is you say they're 2 days a week, 8 hours a day, and you got people all over the state of Nevada that's might be 10 hours one direction getting there, or 5 hours getting there. So then they're going to have to break up their whole work week to get there and qualify for this. Is that correct?
Well, again, for the record, Hunter Stern, IBW 1245. The qualifications, the easiest way to explain it is any trained electrician are already, irrespective of whether they're union or not.
Or you want to qualify if that's a C2 license?
Yes, that's
And
correct.
for the record, ma'am, a C2 license is for all
Hold on.
commercial.
Let's let him answer the question, and then you can respond to his answer, okay?
But again, just to finish, but you're correct. This is a C2 licensed electrical contractor who is therefore a fully trained electrician. And again, they are in the habit or the practice of getting training for various kinds of equipment and work. And they will take it eagerly because it's an opportunity for them to make, do more work and make more money. If the class provides the background and experience and training necessary to install the equipment, irrespective of whether it's this class or another class, the electricians will do it. And could it be burdensome? Yes, it could be, but it generally hasn't been, and people haven't complained to us and saying, can we set this up? Now, that said, this is a national program. If a community college or some other education facility is interested in setting a program up, we would be more than happy to help and facilitate that. The goal, sir, is to ensure everybody is qualified to do this work.
Well, I strongly disagree, but thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next up, we have Assemblyman Watts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Stern, I guess I have a quick question or two for you, and then I also have some for Mr. Johnson, but I'd start with you since you're already at the desk. So one question that I just had about the curriculum itself is, so who develops the curriculum and updates it moving forward? Because I think you did mention in your testimony that there are, while battery storage is the most used technology currently available, there are other storage technologies that are out there, and it looks like a lot of the curriculum focuses on battery safety and elements. So how does this get updated to adapt to changing technologies, and who makes those decisions?
Thank you. For the record, Hunter Stern, IBW 1245. Thank you, Mr. Watt. So in this case, this program was developed at Penn State University with advice and participation by a number of different entities. It's been given, and I'm not going to recall the firm's name, but it's a engineering firm that's essentially serving the client, which is the ESAMTAC program. They are responsible for keeping materials up to date. They are responsible for adding and or, if appropriate, subtracting labs and keeping the curriculum current. To the extent that other technologies could become, over time, more viable, either because of the application or cost, the program can adjust accordingly. And again, the goal is to get as many people trained as quickly as possible. One of the motivations for this program nationally, there are a number of cities and counties across the country, including New York City, that require permits for the installation of this equipment. Obviously, we're not talking about that, but it's something that people find, because of the potential risk, something that certain other jurisdictions in other states have taken. So I hope I answered your question appropriately. And I will endeavor to get the name of that firm and provide it to the committee.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that. I think that's the only question I have for you right now, Mr. Stern. Thank you. Mr. Johnson, I had a couple of questions about the other piece of the bill. So, I see that it makes sense to me that what we're doing is essentially, at this point, it's pretty clear that energy storage is a benefit. We see that this is the direction that we're heading with some of these large projects. And so I understand some of the language that's essentially not a determination of whether, but then, essentially guaranteeing that we're going to continue to go down this process of updating the storage targets. I guess I just have two questions. So we've repealed some sections of statute related to determining whether it's in the public interest, but instead, in the proposed amendment, we've added a legislative declaration about it being in the public interest, and it appears to have some of the same or similar aspects to it, but it also includes a reference to the commission. So I'm just wondering if you could explain a little bit why we're taking that language that was originally kind of direction to the commission in statute and then putting it into a legislative declaration.
Again, Bob Johnston, for the record, Policy Advisor, Nevada State Democratic Caucus. Thank you for the question, Assemblyman Watts. I'm not as familiar with the new Section 2.5 as Senator Lang, but my understanding is you're correct. That is a legislative finding and declaration pulling some of the language from the requirement under SB 204 for the commission to determine whether it was or was not in the public interest to set biennial storage procurement targets. So the commission, having already made that determination, I believe that section is being repealed, 704, 795, but the section 2.5 preserves some of those considerations in a new legislative declaration.
Thank you for that. I would just suggest perhaps that we look at some of that language, particularly in subsection 2 of section 2.5 that includes references to the commission. I just think it makes more sense for a legislative declaration to set high-level public policy. And so, I think subsection 1 kind of fits in that, and some of these other elements may, but it would be better if the legislature is declaring some broad guidelines under which we believe energy storage to be in the public interest or in the interest of the state, rather than also referencing the commission. So I just wanted to raise that as something to consider. The other question I have is, now that we're going to require the commission to, have these regulations and regularly go through the process, I don't see it in the particular sections that are being amended in this bill. Is there any statutory guidance to the Public Utilities Commission on what what they're looking for when they set these targets, or was that just determined in the regulations that the commission developed?
Bob Johnston, for the record. Vice Chair Watts, I believe that is all in the Commission's regulations. The Commission's regulations provide that the utilities shall include an energy storage plan in the resource plan they file. And they're now filing, as you're aware, they now file a joint resource plan. Their next resource plan will be filed June 1 of this year. And then those regulations also provide that the Commission can modify those storage targets. And the Commission could also have them expire. There could well be a determination based on that evaluation that targets do or do not make sense or should be extended to a longer time period. So it's just, in my opinion, it's really ripe for a report back to the legislature on where things are, given the importance of storage as a resource to balance intermittent renewable resources like wind and solar.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I completely agree. And I think that the commission has been doing some great work recently. Although I just want to also again flag that we've had issues in the past when we haven't provided adequate statutory policy direction from the legislature in how some of those results have turned out. And, you know, in some of our other renewable energy policies, we've provided a lot more direction from the legislature for aspects for the commission to consider when making certain decisions. So while we're looking at revising the statutes related to the setting of these targets, wanted to put it out there that potentially giving clearer direction from the legislature of aspects for the commission to consider in setting or updating those targets may result in decisions around those targets and what is submitted from the utility that align with our state's public policy goals. That's all I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and I believe the PUC will be joining us on Zoom. They're generally at each one of our meetings, so once we get to that point, you can also direct that question to them for that answer. I believe the next person that we have up is Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong with a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Lang, for the presentation. I'd like to talk to the gentleman from IBEW. Hi, thank you so much for your comments earlier. I did have a question about the training and this emerging line of work for electricians. Mr. Ellison referred to, Assemblyman Ellison referred to the availability of this at community colleges, and it appears that that's not what's happening here, and I understand that. How are you, if this is a new demand of service that you see going forward with the goals that the state has made for renewable energy, how are you diversifying your base of trainees? You have to have one person on site that has this training. The people under that person, how are you growing your teams? This appears to be an increase in opportunities for people to become electricians, or I don't know how you tier all the people who work in this area, but what are you all doing to branch out and grow the number of people who are in this line of work so that we can see the need across the state increased and more people get involved in this?
Thank you for the question. For the record, Hunter Stern, IBW Local 1245. So this is actually, this is where we talk about opportunity, because it is opportunity. The first things first, the pool of people that will get the eSAMTAC training are electricians, irrespective of their background. If they're holding a C2 license or they're working under someone who is, they can do this work. In terms of creating opportunity for others in the community, we're still trying to implement a really good bill that was passed last session, and I believe the chair was also the author of the sponsor of this bill, a community solar bill. As part of the requirements to implement that bill and the regulations that were issued and approved, the IBW is obligated to increase and create a pool of people, what we call pre-apprentices. So a pool of folks to come in to be exposed to the work. This is not energy storage systems. This is rooftop or other community solar projects. But it's a better opportunity because the level of skill and training involved is lower, and it will give people in the community an opportunity to experience that work. Now, truth be told, there's a lot of people who seem interested, and in our line of work specifically, when they get 30 or 40 feet up in the air, they find that they don't work as well as they do when their feet are on the ground, and that's totally understandable. But there are other requirements of the work, including the voltage, working with high voltage, that put some people off. But in terms of the opportunity, it's the same pathway to get people into these jobs, to get them interested and give them an opportunity so that they can become trained electricians and then begin to work on this equipment. But this equipment specifically requires that fully trained electrician. And again, irrespective of where the trainings come from. If they're recognized by the state, if they hold the license, they can then get the ESAMTAC training.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Go ahead. Thank you. So there was a bill last time where you were trying to increase and have this pre-apprenticeship situation. And I'll just be as transparent as possible. There are opportunities that are needed in my community, and I'm looking at this bill come forward that is going to create a requirement for people who are electricians. That's all within your purview, right? You control the whole thing at this moment on this training. And so that gives you a lot of power, right? To produce these trained people. It also implies that there are opportunities growing for storage. So if you only have one person on site who's the trained person, then that gives opportunities for people and for there to be people under them so that one person can supervise multiple projects. That means that you can have more people who are looking and able to work. And so for me, I'm looking at this going, okay, this is great, but where is the thrust to bring in a diversified workforce to get people to come and do this? And I don't think that every electrician job is on a bucket, right? There are some jobs that are on the ground. Are you saying that anybody who has this Class 2 commercial license also has to be able to work a bucket or be above the ground? Because that was your example. Are there other places that these batteries are installed that are not up in the air? And is that really a prohibition to get more people involved in being electricians? Or has the effort really been, out there to expand the pool of people who are in this line of business? And I mean from a diversity standpoint. Are you all really out there recruiting in neighborhoods and communities like mine so that my folks can work?
Again, for the record, Hunter Stern, IBW Local 1245. So the short answer is we are obligated by regulation, we meaning the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, by regulation implementing AB 465 to do exactly that, to provide the opportunities for people in the community where these community solar projects are being built and the communities who will be served by these projects. Again, it's different than ESAMTAC and the installation of this battery storage equipment, but it's still it is literally the regulation and therefore, in our view, the law to create the opportunities that you're talking about and do so from the community. That is the requirement, and we are tasked working with Dieter to do exactly that. And when I say we, I mean the Brotherhood as a whole. In terms of this particular work, It would be in the installation of energy storage systems. It would be the contractors and the companies doing the installation for the commercial establishments, buildings, strip malls, et cetera, who would determine their workforce. Can we do the same here voluntarily? Absolutely. But it's the IBW is sort of, you give us too much credit, although I wouldn't mind taking it all, but we don't quite have the authority or power that you described. We do have the ability to train people and get people up and running and give them good middle-class jobs, and we take a lot of pride in doing that. But it's our contractors and the people who are hired to install this equipment who actually create the workforce and establish the workforce. Now, again, we are in order to comply with AB 465, we're creating this pre-apprenticeship pathway, if you will, to get the opportunities. And I and the others, engaged in this more directly, would be more than happy to sit down with you or anybody on the committee to explain how that can work in a more transparent or obvious way.
Just one more, Madam Chair. Does the pre-apprenticeship program, at some point, is its intent to lead to fully qualified electricians? Is this a pathway to that?
Hunter, again, for the record, Hunter Stern, IBW 1245. Yes, that is correct. The pre-apprenticeship is to give people an opportunity to enter the apprenticeship. It's a test. I mean, the apprenticeship is a 4+ year program, up to 5 years now with some of the new add-ons to it. But it's so an apprentice, he or she, will work their way through, earn as you learn is the term we like to use. They'll have classroom training directly, and then they'll have on-the-job training. And it's that combination which reinforces the information and allows people to progress from what we call a step, 6-month step, to the next. Some people don't progress. They either have difficulty retaining the information or have lose interest. It's not entirely easy, but the idea is to create that pathway in the communities that you're talking about, so that people can see what's possible. Again, I think there are really good opportunities here, and because we are now required to provide this, not only, and we're also eager to do so, but it's just from a different bill and different circumstances. I hope I answered your question.
Kind of, sort of, but I would appreciate if you could just provide some data on what your performance has been since the passage of AB 465, and let's get an idea of where you're recruiting and who and how people are doing as far as sticking with it, because I want to see people from my community have to take this storage class that you're talking about to be able to install these large kilowatt projects into commercial developments. That means that they've gone through an apprenticeship, that they've learned what they need to, that they're able, and that they're at the table and able to get this training that you're talking about. That means that they've accomplished the ability to have a C2 license that Assemblyman Ellison is talking about. That means that they probably have an opportunity to have a business and employ other people. But if they can't get an opportunity in the apprenticeship program or a pre-apprenticeship program, if they're not on the radar to be recruited at the very bottom, they'll never even be able to have a chance to get to the top. And this is just an issue that I'm having all along for the last several years. I've talked to you and others about availability and opportunity for people to get into this. And I hear a lot of excuses about why and why not. And I'd like to see some results and to see if people are really working hard at getting these things accomplished. So if you've got data, I'd love to see it.
Hunter, again, for the record, Hunter Stern, IBW 1245. So we agree 100%, because what we also find is when people come from the community, they're going to stay in the community. They're going to serve that community. And that's better for us and our contractors. They're committed to the community here in Nevada. That's better than people who might jump around to the best job or the best, financial reward. Better to have people coming from the community, living in the community, and benefiting the community. And it also makes the IBW in particular stronger. So we agree 100%. I'll just let you know that those regulations were just approved, and I believe there's a project, but I don't believe it's one that's formally on the basis of AB 465 that's beginning to start. So it's, unfortunately, the wheel turns slowly, but that doesn't mean that it's not without interest or without a goal. And the goal is to do exactly what you said. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the questions. Next, we have Assemblywoman Peters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to ask a couple of questions. I'm curious about the energy storage definitions, if whomever would. Yeah, thank you. So I went back to the NRS reference for energy storage system definition, that is NRS 704.793, and it's relatively broad and looks to include things, and I think you may have mentioned this in your testimony, such as reservoirs or hydrogen technologies, or what are some other ones? That reservoirs are the big one that I could think of that are, nationally a standard for energy storage that we just don't really talk about as a modern energy storage, such as we talk about batteries, right? So I'm wondering, in the intention of this bill, whether you mean for those, particularly the reservoir storage, to be included as a person shall not install an energy storage system unless they hold an electrical license. And this may be appropriate. It really may be appropriate for a trained electrician to be on staff and installing parts of the hydroelectric structures. But I'm wondering if that's the intention of this bill, or if that definition may just be a little too broad for use in this section.
Thank you for the question. Bob Johnston, for the record. Assemblywoman Peters, you're right, it is a broad definition. It just picks up the definition that from SB 204, I believe. And it's looking at all types of energy storage, including batteries, molten salt, flywheels, pumped hydro, hydrogen, as Mr. Stern referenced. As to the relationship of ESAM-TAC to those particular types of storage, I would defer to Mr. Stern on the scope of ESAM-TAC with respect to other storage technologies. But you're right, it's a broad definition, and that definition was just picked. This bill uses an existing definition from SB 204.
Thank you. I would ask if Mr. Stern would want to respond to clarify on the intent in that section.
Thank you for the question. Again, for the record, Hunter Stern, IBW 1245. So I mentioned this in my opening remarks, but to give it a little bit more clarity, because obviously I wasn't clear before, and I apologize. There are projects based on their scale and scope, which essentially require a general engineering background or degree. This was some of the advice that we got from the Contractors Board. those kinds of projects will not require ESAMTAC because the general engineering requirement is broader than that and actually requires more knowledge and experience. So for the large, in this case, and you're specifically talking about pump storage hydro, which is large scale, long duration energy storage. And it does require trained electricians to install the equipment, but not in the way that the ESAMTAC and the lithium-ion battery energy storage systems operate. So the short answer is the Contractors Board was very clear in their in pointing out that they did not want this to disable those trained or qualified folks designing these systems, and we agreed. And we took the amendment, and I think Senator Lang also mentioned this too, to ensure that those kinds of projects can continue to move forward because the people designing them have requisite experience and training to do so. And I hope I answered that properly.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm having a little trouble jumping between the amendment and the where my notes are, which is attached to the bill in Nellis. So can you just talk about where in the amendment it creates that kind of exemption that you just talked about the contractors union having worked towards, just so I'm clear on what the intent of the language is.
Sure. Again, for the record, Hunter Stern, IBW Local 1245. So the amendment was designed to remove subclassifications and also limit or not limit the people who are who are charged with their general, and the term was general engineering standards or requirements. So if someone is going to design a pump storage system and it's permitted and approved, it's an engineering feat actually because of how the system works. And it's that background and training of the engineers who are getting the permits and the project certified and approved that the original draft would have potentially disabled them from doing that work. And that was not our intent. And so that's the purpose of the amendment, to ensure that those kinds of projects can move forward without any ESAMTAC requirement.
Okay, so I'm looking at this and I think I get where this is coming from. And to be clear, this is just, I want to make sure that we have the intent correct on the record and that the language is reflective of that intent. So in section 5, a person shall not install an energy storage system, which is this broad definition of what an energy storage system is, unless he or she holds a valid license, which could be a license from the contracting board, it could be a license from the professional engineering board, it could be a license from a number of other licensing boards. In the classification and that classification could be in engineering, civil engineering, structural engineering, electrical engineering, or other licensed, other licenses, right? That would be the classification. Required to perform such work issued pursuant to this chapter, which is chapter 624, which I don't know the breadth entirely of that chapter, and I don't know if legal could weigh in real quick on just the breadth of the chapter, 624. To perform those works and the regulation of the board, and the board in this being, who is the board in this particular section?
Again, for the record, Hunter Stern, IBW 1245, it's the Contractors Board.
Okay, thank you, that's clear to me. I would just like to get on the record the breadth of classifications under chapter 624, please.
Yeah. And Assemblymember Peters, you said that better than I did, so thank you.
If we can have legal weigh in. Thank you.
Hello, this is Jessica Dummer with the LCB Legal Division. So Chapter 624 is the chapter that just deals with contracting generally. So I would guess that would be anybody that's under the state contractors board. It's the chapter that creates the state contractors board. I will say that there are certain entities who are not included under 624. So for example, a utility in certain circumstances is not included under 624. And those exceptions are in NRS 624.031 and yes, 624.031 lists certain entities that would not be included for the purposes of that chapter. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. That helps clarify for me what is included in that section. Thank you.
Members, any other questions for any of the presenters? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask Senator Lang, do you have anything more to add before we go to testimony and support?
Thank you, Senator Lang, for the record. Just wanted to respond to a couple things I heard. Assemblyman Watts, you were asking about the targets and why we aren't more specific in the language. Initially, we were more specific. But we found that actually NV Energy had exceeded the goals and we're far ahead. And so we felt it was more important to get the integrated resource plan that the PUC is going to do. And based on that document, create new goals. And that's why we weren't specific in our language now, because we asked that those be given to the Legislative Commission so that we can create new goals based on that plan. So we know where Nevada is and we aren't just shooting in the dark to try and figure out where we are, that we know for sure based on the IRP. On the training, there's lots of questions on the training. IBEW just didn't decide that they wanted to do training for everyone in our state. What happened is they knew that there was a need for safety. Training equals safety. In many jobs, you have to get training so you can do your job, and so it's a safe environment. And that's what they wanted to do, is create a safe environment. So they did research, and they found that there was only one place in the nation that was doing training, and it came out of Penn State, and there were lots of other entities involved. So they created this training, and IBEW started doing it. I've had conversations with IBEW because, I think you're all thinking, I was watching you when they were talking about the number of people that need to be trained to be able to do these jobs. It could be a monumental task. But it doesn't have to be, because IBEW has already said that they would do a train the trainer program. So you could get someone trained for a crew, a group of people that are working on a site. They could train other people in their business so that it wouldn't be the situation where Assemblyman Ellison said that people are driving 10 hours to get to a training for 8 times to get 8 classes. They could train one person, and that person could go back and train other people. Those are models that have worked. I'm a former teacher. We did lots of train the trainers on lots of variety of subjects, and it works really, really well. So those are the kind of things that I would add to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we will go to testimony and support. I'll invite those that are in the room to come up one at a time to testify before we go to our virtual platform. Remember to state your name for the record.
Hello, Will Adler, representing Silver State Government Relations, representing IBEW 1245. We would like to thank Senator Lang for bringing forward Senate Bill 328 and all the participants in this bill as it's progressed throughout the legislative session this year, because there's been a lot of renditions, a lot of changes to it, as you can see, and that most current mock-up is an attempt to really address a lot of that. And get to a place where we're saying we should have energy storage in Nevada, and it should be a priority, because energy storage is what makes solar work at night, right? And it is the future of green energy and the progression of it is having storage with it. So thank you for hearing it today, and thank you, Senator Lane, for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Mr. Adler. I was surprised to see you in my room. I thought you were going to be on Zoom. Thank you for your testimony. Next person, is there anyone else here in the room that wishes to testify in support of Senate Bill 328? Is there anyone here in the room who would like to testify in opposition of Senate Bill 328? Seeing none, is there anyone here in the room who would like to testify in the neutral on Senate Bill 328? Okay, seeing none, I will ask our broadcast staff if we could go to the phone and Zoom. Is there anyone joining us by Zoom or by telephone who would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 328?
To testify in support of Senate Bill 328, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 056. Please press star 6 to unmute. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is James Halsey, Jameshalsey, and I'm the business manager of IBW Local 357. Today I speak on behalf of my 4,000 members in favor of SB 328 and specifically Section 5 regarding ESAMTAC. ESAMTAC stands for Energy Storage and Microgrid Training and Certification. ESAMTAC is a training program and credential that prepares electrical contractors and workers for the safe and effective assembly, testing, commissioning, maintenance, repair, retrofitting, and decommissioning of energy storage and microgrid systems. The ESAMTAC initiative, led by Penn State University, is a nonprofit, brand neutral national training and certification program based on standards and codes developed and or approved by the National Fire Protection Association, the National Electrical Installation Standards, National Electrical Code, and the American National Standards Institute. Our local apprenticeship training center has already held 2 Train the Trainer classes, and we have future ESAMTAC training classes scheduled. ESAMTAC training is fundamental to the safety of the customers and installers of energy storage systems. This bill will make Nevada a leader in energy storage. For this and the reasons previously mentioned, IBW Local 357 supports SB 328. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments, Mr. Halsey. Thank you for joining us. Next caller.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 716. Please press star 6 to unmute. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chairman Moreno, Vice Chair Watts, and members of the committee. My name is Ryan Bellows, RyanBellows, and I'm the Director of Labor and External Relations for NV Energy. NV Energy would like to testify in support of SB 328. We would like to thank the bill sponsor and the bill proponents for working with NV Energy to address the concerns that we had and to address the concerns of other stakeholders. NV Energy is a leader in energy storage. We have several large-scale battery storage projects being constructed right now, and we will have over 1,000 megawatts of battery capacity by the year 2024. One of these projects, Gemini Solar, which is a 690 megawatt solar project in southern Nevada, will bring an additional 380 megawatts of storage online and is one of the country's largest storage projects under development right now. NV Energy continues to study the benefits and impacts of all forms of energy storage on our system, including longer duration forms of storage, like that mentioned in the hearing today, pumped hydro storage and hydrogen storage. We know that as more of our renewable projects come online, diversity in energy storage is going to be a critical piece of the puzzle to ensuring that we can meet demand for our customers when these renewable projects are not producing energy. NV Energy is committed to bringing on energy storage that makes sense for the reliability of our grid and for our customers. We also support the safe construction of these storage systems, and we know that the IBEW is uniquely qualified to build these projects safely. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you so much for your comments. Thank you for joining us today. Next caller.
Caller with the last three digits of 742. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jimmy Lau. First name Jimmy, last name Lau, with Ferrari Public Affairs, representing the Nevada Contractors Association. We'd like to thank Senator Lang and the bill proponents for working with us to clarify the licensure requirements in the bill. And thank you all for your time in hearing this today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Next caller.
Chair, we have no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you so much. Do we have anyone on the line or joining us by Zoom who would like to provide testimony in opposition?
To testify in opposition of Senate Bill 328, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last three digits of 438. Please press star 6 to unmute. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Julian Boggs, Julian Boggs. I am the State Policy Director for the U.S. Energy Storage Association. Good afternoon, Chairman Monroe-Moreno, Ranking Chair Watts, members of the committee. ESA is the National Trade Association dedicated to energy storage. Our members work with all types of energy storage technologies, including batteries and non-battery technologies like compressed air, liquid air, advanced thermal storage, pumped hydro, among others. And our members have built or are developing hundreds of megawatts of energy storage in Nevada. We appreciate the legislators' efforts to advance energy storage, applaud your leadership to date. And we welcome this initiative by the committee to enhance the quality and safety of energy storage installations. And we appreciate several of the changes in the legislation in response to concerns. However, we continue to be concerned that this legislation has been rushed through too quickly in the General Assembly and may needlessly constrain energy storage development. Specifically, we have two concerns and recommendations that I'll mention here. Some of these were addressed by some of the earlier questions, but we do believe that Senate Bill 328 applies to all energy storage systems. That is, any device that absorbs energy, stores it for a period of time, and discharges it for later use. SB 328, we do believe, would require installers of a compressed air storage project or a pumped hydro project to receive training and certification for a program that teaches about battery storage. There was a discussion earlier about the consulting agency that developed this, and I spoke to that agency, and they did confirm that ESAMTAC is a battery storage program. We also recommend that the legislation also allow for additional training programs, and that the agencies, such as the contracting board, be given the authority to approve additional training programs that meet quality standards and access standards that teach the national codes and standards like those mentioned previously. Thank the committee for the opportunity to testify, and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Boggs, and thank you for joining us. Next caller.
Caller with the last three digits of 836. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You'll have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller with the last three digits of 836. Please press star 6 to unmute and begin your testimony.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jessica Ferrato, JESSICA and I represent Advanced Energy Economy. AEE is an industry association comprised of businesses dedicated to making the energy we use secure, clean, and affordable, including those involved in all types of energy storage and microgrids. AEE supports and encourages a well-trained workforce for all energy technologies so that the energy transition can provide the most economic benefits as possible to the state of Nevada. We would like to continue working with the sponsor to refine the language in this bill before it passes to ensure that any battery storage training is appropriately targeted to battery storage installers. Additionally, the energy storage industry and its technologies are undergoing some of the most significant innovation in the energy space, and we believe that the state should maintain a degree of flexibility and oversight in order to revise its workforce qualifications as needed, depending on each old and new technology's needs. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much for joining us and for your comments. Do we have any other callers in opposition?
Yes, Chair. Caller with the last 3 digits of 266. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Chair Monroe Moreno and members of the committee. My name is Nate Bluin. I am, that is BLOUIN, and I work as the policy manager for the Interwest Energy Alliance. Interwest is the regional trade association for developers and manufacturers of utility-scale renewable energy resources across Nevada and the nation. Our members are developing the large-scale energy storage projects that will be critical to meeting Nevada's energy and environmental policy goals. We do appreciate the sponsor and other stakeholders who provided valuable feedback on the policy that would be established by this bill, and we certainly support the intent to train members of the workforce to safely install battery energy storage systems across the state. I would like to raise 2 concerns that we have with the bill as written today. First, the bill codifies a broad definition of energy storage, as Assemblywoman Peters mentioned, that expands beyond the scope of electrochemical battery energy storage, which is the primary technology addressed by the ESAMTAC training program discussed in the bill. This means that contractors working on a range of storage technologies that each have their own complexities will be required to have training that solely applies to battery energy storage. Second, this bill codifies a training program that is largely unknown without an off-ramp should ESAMTAC change or cease to exist, which would leave contractors shorthanded and jeopardize Nevada's energy and emissions policy goals by potentially delaying projects that have already been permitted. We have previously provided language to the sponsor that would alleviate our concerns, but the current draft of the bill has not incorporated all of our suggestions. In closing, we support the intent of the bill to keep Nevada workers safe, but I'd ask the committee to consider the concerns that have been outlined today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments, and thank you for joining us. Do we have any other callers in opposition for Senate Bill 328?
Chair, we have no further callers in opposition.
Thank you so much. We will move to the neutral testimony, and I see Mr. Rear from the PUCN on our Zoom, and I will invite you to go first. I assume that you've been waiting patiently for neutral.
I have. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Garrett Weir, General Counsel for the Public Utilities Commission. So as Mr. Johnston explained earlier, the PUC recently found that it was in the public interest to establish energy storage targets, and it established those targets via regulation. So those regulations that the PUC adopted also created a framework for reevaluating those targets and establishing new targets as necessary in future resource planning proceedings submitted by the applications submitted by the electric utilities. In determining whether to establish new targets, the PUC will, beginning this year, review an energy storage plan that the regulations require NV Energy to file. The components of that plan include how the utilities plan to meet the targets within the action plan period. That's the next 3 years. The projects the utility is seeking approval of, and evaluation of the costs and benefits. The regulations also require NV Energy to provide annual energy storage updates beginning in 2022. The PUC is happy to provide the report to the Legislative Commission that this bill requires. With regard to the proposed amendment, the mock-up before you, the PUC does note that in finding that storage targets were in the public interest, it previously evaluated the costs and benefits delineated under the existing law at NRS 704-795 subsection 3.
And so
30
to
seconds.
address Vice Chair Watts's observation, in reevaluating energy storage targets pursuant to our regulations, the PUC would again apply these considerations were they to remain in place. So we think it's perhaps a preferable alternative to simply amend the bill to unrepeal this language rather than adding it as a legislative declaration. Finally, if I may, and I might need to go beyond the time restrictions here to just address Vice Chair Watts's question regarding how the PUC sets the energy storage targets. If I may have your indulgence.
You may
Madam
have my
Chair.
indulgence. I was going to ask you to address the question that was asked earlier, so please go ahead.
Wonderful. So primarily in setting those targets, the PUC looks at need. And it looks at the demands on the system, how we're going to balance the supply and demand for electricity. And one consideration that's important in looking at the targets for energy storage systems is that there are diminishing returns at some point. Ideally, we would be focusing our use of energy storage systems on serving peak demand for electricity. But if we have too much storage, we may have to serve light load periods, such as overnight, with storage instead of using zero or near zero cost energy. Notably, the PUC has directed NV Energy to study the amount of energy storage that can be interconnected before negative effects appear on the system. NV Energy will supply this information with its upcoming IRP filing this summer, and that information will inform the PUC's reevaluation of energy storage targets. With that, thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm happy to answer any further questions.
We do have a question for you. Hold on one moment. Assemblyman Watts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weir, for providing some of that additional information. I appreciate it and appreciate the work that the commission has put in on this issue, as well as the consideration. And I always want to be careful, understanding that it's the legislature's job to set some of the public policy parameters, and then the commission to undertake some of the more in-depth regulatory work to make things happen. So it seems like perhaps not repealing those sections of statute, but perhaps maybe clarifying them, that instead of being related to determining whether or not to, that it's in the public interest to establish those regulations and set those targets, perhaps just modifying it to be items to be considered when setting or reevaluating the targets. Some of those parameters that are in statute now would apply and continue to provide. I mean, so it sounds like you've already established a process to look at these things, but in general, again, I think it's helpful for the legislature to provide some guidance in aspects to consider when making those determinations, so that wherever you end up generally falls within the parameters that we're looking for as the legislature. I guess without trying to put you in an uncomfortable position, does my understanding kind of line up with how this might work a little bit better?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Vice Chair Watts. Your understanding is correct, and we previously followed the direction of the legislature in examining those delineated costs and benefits, and the commission, if additional clarification is necessary, and frankly, I think we would have, under even just the existing law, if it were reinserted and not repealed, rather, the commission would apply those same considerations of costs and benefits to its examination of whether to set new targets and reevaluating the existing targets.
Thank you for that, and so I think it's just helpful that while the PUC does have a process in place when we repeal those statutes, technically there are no more guardrails for what the commission would consider. So if we keep them in, then we ensure that we're keeping that same guidance in place for evaluating those targets in the future. Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Weir, and thank you, Madam Chair, for the indulgence of getting that on the record.
Of course. Thank you, Mr. Weir, for joining us, and we'll go to our next caller or person on Zoom. I'm not sure we have another person on Zoom who wishes to provide testimony in the neutral.
To testify in the neutral position on Senate Bill 328, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 139. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Monroe Moreno and members of the committee. My name is Misty Grimmer, Grimmer, with the Ferraro Group representing the Nevada State Contractors Board. I'm here today to testify in neutral on SB 328 with the proposed amendment 3352. The Contractors Board appreciates the opportunity to work with Senator Lang on the bill's language to address concerns regarding the contractor classifications referenced as it relates to the scope of work that can be performed within respective trades. Having reviewed the amendment proposed today, the Contractors Board agrees with the changes being sought and again thanks Senator Lane for her willingness to work with us on the language. Thank you kindly. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful afternoon as well. Next caller.
Chair, we have no further callers in neutral.
Thank you so much for that. I will invite Senator Lane back for any closing comments.
Senator Lang, for the record, thank you so much for all of your questions, and it helps us as we move forward. I just want to clarify that we took that language out of the bill because the PUC asked us to, and so now they want us to put it back in. We'll look at that and talk with them and figure out how to move forward on that. I think the other people that spoke in opposition, we've worked with almost everyone. A couple of these people are brand new people, so we would be happy to reach out to them because I think all of you operate this way as well as I, that we want to have the best bill possible that's going to help people in Nevada as we move forward and give a good roadmap for how we do battery storage in Nevada. So thank you so much, and if you have any further questions, please reach out to my office. Happy to help.
Thank you so much for the presentation, and I appreciate the conversation that was had by the members, and there were a number of concerns and questions that members had, so I would encourage you to reach out to them tomorrow. We will be holding a work session on Thursday for matters that have been brought before us that will be getting a work session, and I think there's a number of items that would need to be finalized, clarified, and addressed before I could put this on my work session. So please reach out to my members.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And with that, members, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 328. And we will move on to the next item on our agenda, which will be our work session. And with that, we will start with Senate Bill 58, and I will turn it over to our policy analyst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Katie Seaman, SIEMON, Committee Policy Analyst. Senate Bill 58 revises certain functions and responsibilities of the Investigation Division of the Department of Public Safety. This bill was first heard before the committee on April 22nd, 2021. It was sponsored by the Senate Committee on Growth and Infrastructure on behalf of the Investigation Division of the Department of Public Safety. Senate Bill 58 revises the responsibilities of the Investigation Division of the Department of Public Safety to include investigations relating to technological crimes and assisting other divisions within the department. Upon request, the division may also, 1, assist certain state agencies in carrying out criminal investigations for enforcing statutes relating to cannabis, and 2, furnish services relating to the investigation of crimes to any agency, board, commission, or other unit of the executive branch that is authorized to conduct criminal investigations. This measure has never been amended, and there are no fiscal notes associated with Senate Bill 58. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Members, with that, I will entertain a motion for due pass. Do I have anyone willing to make a motion for due pass? I have a motion from Assemblyman Watts. Can I get a second? From Assemblyman Miller. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have one nay, and that is from Assemblywoman, two nays from Assemblywoman Peters and Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. With that, the motion passes, and I will assign the floor statement to Assemblyman Watts. Moving on to the next item on our work session agenda, which will be Senate Bill 60.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 60, in its first revision, revises provisions governing vehicles. The measure was sponsored by the Senate Committee on Growth and Infrastructure on behalf of the Department of Motor Vehicles, and this bill was first heard before our committee on April 27th, 2021. Senate Bill 60 revises the design requirements and numbering of special license plates by the Department of Motor Vehicles, or DMV. The bill also revises the process for an applicant's participation in the design of a special plate, including deadlines for the submittal and revision of a special plate design. Senate Bill 60 clarifies that, based on a recommendation from the Commission on Special License Plates, the DMV may take disciplinary action against a charitable organization that has failed to comply with the statutes governing financial administration of special license plate fees. The measure provides for design criteria for exempt license plates without distinguishing marks that are used in undercover investigations, expands the number of law enforcement agencies that may be issued such plates, and protects the disclosure of information related to such vehicles. Senate Bill 60 increases the expiration date of a special permit from 15 to 30 days for the movement of a vehicle to sell out of state, or for the movement outside of Nevada of a vehicle purchased by a non-resident. A person who is not a dealer, manufacturer, or rebuilder and who purchases an unregistered vehicle or a vehicle from a private seller may move the vehicle without a DMV permit for 3 days after the date of purchase if the person carries proof of ownership or purchase and liability insurance in the vehicle. Finally, the bill revises the formula for distribution of the money in the pollution control account by removing the calculations related to funds collected from the licensure of certain classic vehicles that are exempt from emissions testing. There are no amendments for this committee's consideration. There have been 2 fiscal notes received from the DMV and the Department of Public Safety, both showing no fiscal impact. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the explanation of the measure. And at this time, I'll entertain a motion from the committee for a due pass. I have a motion from Assemblyman Watts, a second from Assemblyman Wheeler. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously of the members present. And I will assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Brown May. Moving on to Senate Bill 66.
For the record, Katie Seaman, Policy Analyst. Senate Bill 66, in its first revision, enacts provisions relating to access to the Internet and telecommunications technology for pupils. The measure is sponsored by the Senate Committee on Education on behalf of the Clark County School District. This bill was first heard before this committee on April 27th, 2021. Senate Bill 66 requires the Office of Science, Innovation, and Technology in the Office of the Governor to develop a statewide system of gathering data related to residential internet service and telecommunications technology accessibility for pupils in Nevada. The bill also requires the office to, number 1, collaborate with various entities to ensure pupils have access to telecommunications technology and the internet. Number 2, recommend minimum standards for devices owned by a school or school district. Number 3, conduct a gap analysis regarding the lack of pupil connectivity. Number 4, develop a fiscal plan to address such gaps. And number 5, report on these responsibilities to the governor, the State Board of Education, and the legislature annually. There are no amendments for this committee's consideration. Following the adoption of Amendment 13, the fiscal note originally provided by the Department of Education for the measure as introduced is no longer applicable. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Members, I will entertain a motion for a do pass on Senate Bill 66. I have a motion from Assemblywoman Peters, a second from Assemblyman Levitt. Any discussion on the motion? Assemblywoman Peters, and then we'll go to Assemblyman Ellison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to reiterate to the proponents of the bill that there was a request to ensure we're including an analysis of parents and their ableness to assist their children in accessing. So I just encourage that be considered as part of this project.
Thank you so much. Assemblyman Ellison?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. I got a few questions I'm going to try to resolve before this goes to a hearing, but I'm going to vote no and reserve my right to change it to yes.
Thank you so much. And members, I will remind everyone, your vote to get out of this committee is appreciated. If you do, for whatever reason, decide to change your mind, I ask that you inform me before it hits the floor for the final vote. So we have a first and a second, and we've had discussion. So all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. We have one nay, and that is from Mr. Ellison. The motion passes. And with that, we'll close the work session, and the floor statement will go to Assemblywoman Peters. Close the work session for Senate Bill 66, and we will open the work session for Senate Bill 204.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Katie Seaman, Policy Analyst. Senate Bill 204 revises provisions governing the Department of Motor Vehicles. It was sponsored by Senator Dennis, first heard before this committee on April 22nd, 2021. Senate Bill 204 authorizes the Department of Motor Vehicles, or DMV, to issue cards, certificates, and licenses in electronic form, provided a physical version of the document has been issued. Subject to statutory exceptions, a person must carry the physical version of the document when operating a motor vehicle. The bill also authorizes the DMV to establish electronic branch offices to accept forms and other documentation and to conduct certain transactions electronically. The DMV is not permitted to conduct transactions electronically if state or federal law specifically requires a transaction to occur in person or for documents to be presented in their original form. There are no amendments to the measure for this committee's consideration. A fiscal note provided by the Office of Project Management within the DMV shows no fiscal impact. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Members, with that, I will entertain a motion for do pass. I have a motion from Assemblyman Watts. May I get a second? A second from Assemblywoman Brown May. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There's no opposition. The motion carries, and I will assign the floor statement to Assemblyman Roberts. And with that, we'll close the work session for Senate Bill 204 and open the work session for Senate Bill 362.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Katie Seaman, Committee Policy Analyst. Senate Bill 362 revises provisions relating to public transit systems. The measure is sponsored by the Senate Committee on Growth and Infrastructure and was first heard before this committee on April 22nd, 2021. Senate Bill 362 authorizes a regional transportation commission in a county with a population of 700,000 or more, currently Clark County, to provide microtransit services as part of its public transit system. The bill also repeals a requirement that the Regional Transportation Commission in Clark County receive certain determinations from the Nevada Transportation Authority before it may operate an on-call public transit system. The measure has never been amended, and there are no fiscal notes associated with it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Members, with that, I will ask for a motion for due pass. I have a motion from Assemblyman Miller, a second from Assemblyman Watts. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And I will give that floor statement to Assemblyman Levitt. And that closes the work session for Senate Bill 362, and we'll open the work session for Senate Concurrent Resolution 8.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Katie Seaman, Committee Policy Analyst. Senate Concurrent Resolution 8 expresses support for the identification of key transportation priorities for the Lake Tahoe Basin. The measure is sponsored by the Senate Committee on Growth and Infrastructure on behalf of the Legislative Committee for the Review and Oversight of the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency and the Marlette Lake Water System. The measure was first heard before the committee on April 29th. Senate Concurrent Resolution 8 expresses support for the efforts of the Bi-State Working Group on Transportation and requests the group collaborate and agree on a 5-year list of transportation priorities and projects in the Lake Tahoe Basin. The list of transportation priorities and projects should include, number 1, cost-benefit analyses for each project. Number 2, consistency with California and Nevada's climate change goals. And number 3, the identification of potential funding sources, as well as equity issues and barriers to implementation. The measure has never been amended, and there are no fiscal notes associated with it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Members, with that, I will entertain a motion to do pass.
So moved.
I have a motion from Vice Chair Watts, and I get a second. A second from Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and I will assign that floor statement to Assemblyman Wheeler. And with that, we will close the work session for Senate Concurrent Resolution 8. And that brings us to the last item on our agenda for today, and that is public comment. Now we'll ask our broadcast staff if we have anyone wishing to make public comment today.
Make public comment. Please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, the public comment line is open and working. However, we have no callers at this time.
Thank you so much. I will give it just a few minutes. We did have a long hearing today, and it may be someone wishing to call back in. Okay, by chance, do we have anyone join us for public comment?
Chair, we still have no callers, unfortunately.
Thank you so much. So with that, members, I will conclude today's meeting. Our next meeting for the Assembly Committee on Growth and Infrastructure will be on Thursday, the 13th. We'll begin at 1:30, and the meeting will consist of a work session only for measures that have come before our committee in the past few weeks. Wish you all a good day, and I am trying to get our committee photos rescheduled. As soon as I have that date, I will get it to you all, and I have matching masks for all of us. Yay! All right, with that, this meeting's adjourned.